In Venezuela, people marched in support of President Nicolas Maduro's plan of action on the Essequibo. In Guatemala, the president-elect Bernardo Arevalo has labeled the decision of his Justice Ministry as absurd, ridiculous, and a perverse coup d'etat. The UN Security Council was unable to approve a draft resolution on the conflict in the Gaza Strip due to a veto by the United States. The draft prepared by the United Arab Emirates called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire and the unconditional release of all hostages. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news, and we're going to begin in Venezuela. The President Nicolas Maduro Moros led the March for Loyalty Day as the people demonstrated in support of the government's plan of action on the Essequibo. This Friday, on the Day of Loyalty and Love in the country, citizens marched from Fine Arts to the Palace of Miraflores. Demonstrators are shown with the flag of Venezuela, banners in defense of the Essequibo, and the new map of the nation implemented in schools. The government of Venezuela seeks to incorporate the organic law to create the state of Guayana Essequiba and the election of authorities in the region. President Maduro and Executive Vice President participated in the event. During his speech, the Venezuelan head of state took the opportunity to demand once again the coercive measures against the Venezuelan people be lifted. Venezuela's National Assembly unveiled on Friday the new map of the nation that includes the Guayana Essequibo as its 24th state. During the session, the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, emphasized that it is a map that represents, with justice and accuracy, the historical reality of the country since the times of the liberator Simón Bolívar. He also emphasized the participation of the Venezuelan people in the defense of national sovereignty. The action is part of 9 measures announced by the head of state, Nicolas Maduro, after the victory of the consultative referendum of December 3rd.
This is the map that the liberator Simón Bolívar bequeathed to us. It is the map liberated by his sword. A map that we have to take care of as we have to take care of every inch of that sovereign territory, every space of its sacred sky, and also take care of our rivers, our seas, especially the exit of Venezuela to the Atlantic Ocean.
On the other hand, the President of the National Assembly stressed that present time is a reminder for the nation to never surrender to foreign interests.
Let the green map remain as a hope, a map that has been so hard to defend and preserve, also as a reminder to stay in this room. So that no Venezuelan man or woman puts himself or herself at the orders of foreign interests or transnational oil companies, of foreign governments that have acted against the people and against the territory of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro affirmed in his podcast called Maduro Podcast that the case of Professor Carlos Lanz Rodriguez was a severe attempt to manipulate.
There is another truly painful case, very painful, difficult, very difficult. The case of Professor Carlos Lanz Rodriguez, master of revolutionaries, painful, hard, that was tried to manipulate. There were manipulators to cover up. There were manipulators to try to deceive the revolution. They were directly attacking me, not just the institutions, me. And there were manipulators trying to take the case to the CPI, etc. There were manipulators who let them manipulate by low feelings, meanness, envy. And then they shut up, and whoever silences grants very painful. but which demonstrated the scientific capacity of the Venezuelan scientific police in coordination of the investigative and scientific capacity. The patience of the Attorney General's office were terrible discoveries of those terrible days.
In Guatemala, President-elect Bernardo Arevalo has labeled the decision by the Ministry of Justice as absurd, ridiculous, and a perverse coup d'etat. He made the statement at a press conference together with the Vice President-elect Karim Herrera and deputies of his party's Semilla movement. Arevalo said that this is a maneuver to annul the past elections. On Friday, the Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, backed by the Ministry of Justice, raised accusations of alleged crimes committed during the past elections that could render them null and void. In the face of such serious accusations, Arevalo has argued that democracy in Guatemala has been compromised. Brazil's 29 political parties are starting plans for next year's municipal elections, which will feature new quotas for women and the largest authorized campaign budget in the nation's history. In Brasilia, our correspondent Brian Meir has more.
2023 is coming to an end, and across Brazil's political spectrum, all eyes are on next year's municipal elections. There's 5,568 municipalities in Brazil. Every one of them is going to have elections for city councilors and mayors next year. And this means dividing up Brazil's massive 5 billion real fund for parties financing their candidates in elections. A first for next year is that 30% of this funding has to be put towards women candidates. That means that all parties must field a certain amount of women candidates, and 15% of their elected city councilors have to be women. There's over 1,000 municipalities in Brazil that don't have a single female city councilor. So this is going to represent a massive sea change in municipal politics in Brazil. Here in Brasilia, the Workers' Party is having its 2024 election planning conference, and potential candidates for city council and mayor from all across the country are here. President Lula is going to address them tonight, and they're going to work out in a 2-day series of workshop strategies for helping increase the Workers' Party's participation in the municipal level next year in 2024.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. Another deadly day of Israeli bombings and attacks on the Gaza Strip, this time hitting an area near a hospital, leaving several dead and wounded, and once again most of the victims turned out to be women and children. Our correspondent Noor Harasin brings us the latest details from Gaza.
These are Gaza's morning. One morning we wake on the bodies of those who were killed overnight, and the other morning we wake up in the hospital between the people who got injured. Of course, as usual, mostly children and women. Here I am inside the Shuhada al-Aqsa hospital, where this morning the Israeli forces targeted several places in Deir al-Balah, al-Nusayrat refugee camp and al-Burayj camp. And here is a sense of what is happening in the hospital. Here is who are most of the people injured in this Israeli attack. Children, انتوا من وين اجيتوا يا خالتو؟ وين القصف صار؟ وين جنبكيكم؟
It was under the neighbor's house.
وين يعني في أي منطقة؟
In the neighborhood of Aswan.
Okay, so their home is next to As-Salam neighborhood in Deir al-Balah. Again, this area was not ordered to evacuate from the people were not ordered to evacuate from those areas. But again, and as we said before, a safe area mean only that less people could get killed. Here is in Shuhada al-Aqsa Hospital, people talked about more than 30 people that were killed on one airstrike on Al-Waida family overnight, and the continuous Israeli bombardment here in Deir al-Balah, Al-Buraish camp, and also other refugee camps inside Middle Gaza, which is considered, Middle Gaza is actually considered a safe area here in Gaza. Nur Harazin, TeleSUR, Gaza.
The United States vetoed on Friday a United Nations Security Council resolution that would have called for an immediate ceasefire in the intense fighting between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. The veto took place after the Security Council held an emergency meeting to discuss the catastrophic situation in Gaza. The United States Deputy Representative at the UN, Robert Wood, said the resolution was divorced from reality and would be a recipe for disaster. This follows Wednesday's urgent letter by Secretary General Antonio Guterres urging the body to help end what he called a carnage in the world border enclave through a lasting humanitarian ceasefire. In the votes on the proposal, 13 members, including China and Russia, spoke in favor, while the UK abstained and the US was the only one to oppose. Israeli troops forced Palestinian citizens to leave United Nations shelters in the Gaza Strip. The United Nations Agency for Palestine Refugees announced that it evacuated 4 of its shelters in the town of Khan Yunis, south of Gaza, by order of the Israeli army. The agency said that more than 1 million Palestinians have been displaced from the 94 centers belonging to the agency. Since the beginning of the siege, the agency has registered a total of 129 attacks against its facilities and at least 276 people displaced by the occupation army forces. Between 200 and 300 Israelis gathered on Friday in front of the tent set up near the Knesset, where the families of those killed and kidnapped on October 7th are holding vigils in a protest to demand the resignation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The protest followed an alleged attempt to set fire overnight to the facility where several people were sleeping. Organizers of the demonstration detailed that authorities are investigating the incident and that the tent was put up with all the necessary authorizations from the power company. Before the start of the conflict with Hamas, Netanyahu had faced months of protests over his controversial judicial reform that gives the government decisive influence in the selection of judges, limiting the Supreme Court's scope to strike down laws or rule against the executive. Thousands of Yemenis in the Houthi rebel-controlled capital of Sana'a demonstrated on Friday in solidarity with Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
We continue to support Gaza and the Palestinian cause and are ready for all options. And we say to the commander that we have authorized you in all the decisions that you implement against the Israeli enemy in preventing Israeli ships from entering the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea.
We stand alongside our brothers in Palestine, Gaza and Jerusalem. We are stationed in the field of preparation to be mujahideen for the sake of God.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. Over 250 South Sudanese soldiers left on Friday the Democratic Republic of the Congo's east. The contingent left in 3 rotations throughout the day, according to a military source. The soldiers took off from Goma bound for Juba. After the Kenyans, the South Sudanese are the latest group from an East African Community regional force to withdraw from eastern DRC. The regional force includes Uganda and Burundi, who are set to leave in coming weeks. The seven-nation EAC first deployed troops in the violence-plagued eastern DRC in November 2022. They deployed at the invitation of DRC authorities and were tasked with overseeing the withdrawal of M23 fighters from eastern DRC. Both DRC's president and local residents accused the force of cohabiting with the rebels rather than forcing them to lay down arms. Kinshasa then refused to renew the force's mandate. Burundi's Supreme Court sentenced former Prime Minister Alain Guillaume Bunyoni to life in prison on Friday. A judicial source said that he was convicted on charges including attempting to overthrow the government, illicit enrichment, and destabilizing the economy. The former general was named PM in July 2020, then dismissed in September 2022. His ouster came just days after President Evariste Ndayishimiye warned of a coup plot against him. The court sitting in session at the prison where Bunyoni was detained followed the prosecution's request. It also ordered the authorities to confiscate 4 houses and buildings as well as a land parcel and 14 vehicles belonging to Bunyoni. 5 others in the dock, including the 2 main co-defendants, a police colonel and a senior intelligence agent, received sentences ranging from 3 to 15 years. A day ahead of by-elections, Zimbabwe's opposition Citizens Coalition for Change vows to contest court rulings that bars all of its contenders from standing in the new votes. At a press conference in the capital Harare, CCC spokesperson Promise Magwanasi accuses the ruling ZANU-PF party of corrupting the judicial system.
Our legal team has successfully served ZEC through the Chief of Elections, Mr. Otole Saigwana, with our appeal and a letter of demand of all our legitimate candidates to be included on the ballot for tomorrow's by-election. Accordingly, by-elections are proceeding as scheduled with all our candidates on the ballot paper. We urge all citizens to turn out in their numbers to reconfirm our legitimate candidates by re-electing them back into Parliament. ZANU-PF has contaminated and corrupted our justice system through the criminal abuse of the courts. They are afraid of proper elections and are using nefarious, albeit failed attempts to remove legitimately nominated candidates from the ballot paper.
The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization recently inscribed the Syrian traditional glass-blowing technique on the list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity, a declaration that Syrians hope will contribute to consolidating their efforts to keep alive this artistic craft that emerged in Syria more than 2,000 years ago. Let's watch the following report by our correspondent, Hisham Wanos.
In the ancient city of Damascus, where the mosque embraced the churches in a true atmosphere of peace and harmony, is located the modest glass-blowing workshop of the veteran Syrian craftsman Mohammed Al-Alak, whose family is among the few Syrian families active in this field, and that thanks to his dedication and perseverance, he managed to save this ancient craftsmanship that dates back to the 9th century BC. And succeeding in having it inscribed on UNESCO's representative list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity.
With the support of the Secretary of Syrian Development, after more than 2.5 years of effort and daily monitoring, we have achieved this dream of inscribing this craftsmanship in the list of intangible cultural heritage of UNESCO, a matter that fills us with pride because with this step we are managing to preserve part of this craftsmanship heritage and to know that more than 60 years of work have not been in vain.
This profession was on the verge of disappearing, but thanks to the efforts of veteran Muhammad, new generations of glass-blowing artisans were formed and this technique was preserved despite the difficulties resulting from the war and the blockade.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscasts and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSURenglish.net. You can also join us on our social media on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.